Welcome to the Workbench and welcome to another episode of Wheels Wings TV. Today we have the new 1/350 scale USS Missouri from Joyard. Let's have a look. First up, we have the one-piece molded hull with some very nice hull plating molded. Something you don't see a lot of on ship kits, big or small. As of course these things were not made out of one piece of metal, they were made out of many pieces of metal. Some kits will usually have the lengthwise, either raised or recessed lines to represent the planks, or plates, I should say, not planks. But these guys have actually gone and molded in representations of all the hull plating and portholes and whatnot, which is very nice to see. Nice attention to detail right there. We also have our bilge keels molded in place, commendably thin, so no having to glue those on and try to get them in the right place. There are some mold lines in addition to the hull plates. I'll have to take those down a little bit. And a few little pips where I think the plastic was probably injected in, so I have to smooth those down. A little bit of flash here and there, but overall definitely better than having to glue a whole thing together. So this would probably be a good contender if you were a small-scale RC ship enthusiast. It's a lot easier to waterproof a one-piece hull than a multi-piece hull. But that's off to a nice start. Next we have our one-piece main deck. Another thing that's nice to see done in one piece, because there's nothing more annoying than having to join up a couple of deck pieces and then obliterating all of the molded detail as you try to fill the gap that shouldn't be there. And we do have some very finely molded planking detail for the wooden deck. Maybe a little too fine. So you just have to be careful you don't swamp the paint on there. You might lose a little bit of that. But everything else looks really good. Very nice detail around all the hatches, or the raised section for the hatches on the deck. Very nice. And, you know, some of the little splinter shields, not, I wouldn't say they're super scale thin, but they look very good. Around some like little tubs for anti-aircraft weapons. And of course not wasting any space. I use the space in the middle here to mold a few other parts. Get some more gun tubs and some bulkheads or walls of some description, which have incredibly fine detail molded in place. I think you've got, you know, little, almost look to be like electrical conduits and junction boxes perhaps. Very fine details and very fine raised lines, I guess, where everything be welded together, I would assume. And very fine texture for, I don't know, it'd be like anti-skid diamond plate type material up on the bow here. That's very nicely done. Some big ejector pins. Shouldn't interfere with your fit, but you'd probably want to make sure you grind those down nonetheless. That seems to be quite a bit of that on the bottom of these tubs here. Very, very tall pieces left from the ejector pins. So those, I mean, it's easier to cut them off than it is to fill a recessed one if it's in an exposed area. So I suppose that's the lesser of two evils, but still, it's I mean, some people will probably go and spring for a wood deck, but then again, for most of their wartime career, the Missouri and the other Iowa class ships did have their decks painted in a dark blue, so what we have molded here should be more than adequate. Pretty good. And cleverly packaged inside the hull, we have a whole bunch of various slide molded superstructure components. Once again, not wasting any space, using the voids in the middle to mold more parts. So you got more very, very fine details around the perimeter. Portholes are molded very deep. Hatches are molded all the way through. More of that very fine wood deck molded in place. This part does seem to might have a little bit of a warp in it, but I don't think that should be, yeah, that's nothing major, just to tape that down. But still looks very, very nice. Another piece, more very fine details. All the, I guess it'd be panel lines, weld lines. These little plumbing or electrical details. Even this little ventilation grill here, that's spectacular. Everything's very crisp, very sharp. You know, more little panels molded in the middles here. Very nice. More of the same. Building model ships is kind of like making cakes, just lots and lots and lots of layers. More, oh man, these ventilation grills, those are awesome looking. It's very fine, very sharp moldings. Some ejector pins on the undersides, overhangs. You're probably not gonna see those, but all the and you know, nice that they're, you know, put part numbers on the piece so you're not trying to figure out what's what. But anywhere that's visible is nice and clean and well done. That's very nice. Some more gun tubs. More of those. Get a live one. More of those raised ejector pin remnants. So have to make sure you get all those snipped off so you don't have any fit or clearance issues. More gun tubs with these big ejector pins on the bottom. So these ones, these got some structure molded on them, so it's possible those are going to be a bit more visible. And these ones here, you've got these raised ejector pins next to your locating pins, but I mean, as long as you're careful, you can get those cut flush and you shouldn't have any issue. You know, Not super thin on the walls, but very good looking anyway. Did have one little fatality here, broke off, but that broke clean, didn't hurt anything. Extensive use of multi-part or slide molding throughout this kit. That's how you get those wonderful sharp details on the sides of three-dimensional parts. The old school way of doing this would you'd have to flat pack everything, all the walls be molded separate, then you'd have seams to fill on your corners. So I think we can handle a few ejector pins for not having to do all that annoying assembly. Very nice. And a couple of more pieces here. More very fine, like even very fine little rivets or bolts, fastener detail molded on the top of this little box here. Very nicely done. Some mold lines, but it's not too bad. And this piece here, very fine, like I don't know if this is plumbing or electrical. Very fine details. These guys got into model airplanes, man, oh man, or armor, but this fine work on scale ships is really nice. I don't know if these lines forming a triangle here are supposed to be intentionally raised, or if those are mold lines. So I might have to consult instructions or maybe some reference photos to determine that. But if we do have to take those off, you'll want to be very careful not to lose any of the really fine details on this piece. But some very nice molding so far from the Joyard guys. Next big sprue, we've got some more superstructure and what I'm going to assume are the smokestacks, with even more fine details molded in place. Absolutely love these conduits, plumbing, junction boxes, whatever these little snaky pipes are all over the thing. They look absolutely amazing. A little bit more flash on this sprue, but nothing too worrisome. All the small parts are pretty clean, so it's not too bad. More fine details, even more fine details. So again, a few more gun tubs, some small little various pieces. Got our propellers, not super thin, but not overly thick, so those aren't too bad. Little tiny bit of flash, little bit of a mold line in between each blade, but that shouldn't be too hard to clean up and get those painted up in some nice bronze alloy color. Of course, you could also hit the aftermarket and find some cast metal propellers, then you don't have to paint them. Very fine perforated deck panels here, look really nice. And we've even got, I don't know if those are sirens or loudspeakers or something, but molded with a hollow end. Very on these round pieces, very fine raised, I'll say rivets on the top. Ejector pins aren't so bad on this one. All the backs of these parts are pretty clean. A few raised ones here and here. Yeah, some big ones here, and we'll judging from the detail on the underside, we're going to see the bottom of this perhaps. Some slightly recessed ones here, but not too bad. You're probably not going to see a lot of these under these overhangs anyway, but at least they're trying to put them in places that would be lesser noticed. And I mean, bonus points for molding, even if you're not really going to see the undersides of these overhangs, molding the structure in there. You know, if you're getting down and going in there with a flashlight and you just catch a little glimpse of some of that structure, just adds a little bit more realism to the model. That's looking really nice. Our next biggest sprue, and we've got 3 of them. We've got our float plane, scout plane, and believe it or not, they've got the radial engine molded into the cowling. That is impeccable. That honestly looks better than the radial engine in most of the recent Airfix kits. Panel lines look very sharp. Now there's no cockpit detail in here, so some people might be a bit disappointed, but something I haven't mentioned yet, all these sprue attachments, or sprue gates, very fine. There might be a lot of them, like on these parts you get 4 on each, but they are all very small, so cleanup is going to be minimal. Ones on the propeller here might be a little heavy, but careful with a good set of sprue cutters or maybe a razor saw and you'll get that off cleanly. We got some more slide molding action going on here with one of our little motor cutters. Man, that is beautiful. That is that's I'm not well versed with ship models, but that's probably one of the nicest looking little boats that I've ever seen. And got some probably cable reels. You got the little cranes for the boats. There's a specific nautical term that escapes me right now. Davits, there we go. The davits for the boats. One of the anchors. Some very fine pieces. Little tiny bit of flash, but not scary amounts anyway. Not enough that you can build another kit from. Those look really good. Some sort of hose or pipe runs molded out in the end here. And all these round sections, they're all molded hollow. I can't tell you what they are, but they look really good. Yeah, very impressive. Next sprue is also a triple. We've got our main gun turrets for the 16-inch guns. More very fine raised rivets. I know in real life these are probably ginormous rivets or bolts, but I'm used to airplanes, so I'm going to call them rivets. And these, once again, multi-part mold action going on here, so we've got very fine detail on all sides. Raised and recessed. Fine lines where the armor plates meet, so you can see the thickness of the front face of those gun turrets. That's probably about 1.5 millimeters times 350. Gives you an idea there. We got our main gun barrels molded with the muzzles open. A little bit of flash there, but that's not too bad. So that's, and assume that's either a loud hailer or possibly the ship's bell. That's even molded somewhat hollow. Got some, looks like cable reels, another gun tub. Even got our blast bags molded open. A little bit of a mold line down the middle, but that's not too bad. Those look really good. Of course, the bottom of the turret. A little bit of detail on there. Yeah, those are going to be nice looking when they're all, there's probably going to be a bunch of photo-etch railings and other ladders and fittings that go on this. So that's going to look really good, but even just as is here, that looks really nice. Next we got 5 of this one. And we've got our secondary gun turrets stuck way out here, so more multi-part mold and to very good effect. That is very, very nice. Raised hatches, raised recessed rivets, hatches on the back, rivets on the top. Those are gorgeous. Got our Carly floats. And they're not quite molded all the way through on the netting or the grating there, but deep enough that those look really, really nice. And of course, our gun barrels for the secondary turrets will also have hollow muzzles. So if you don't want to have to go and get some brass barrels and you don't like drilling them out, no worries there. Got some, I don't think those are shells. I think those are all compressed gas cylinders, like, you know, like acetylene or oxygen or something like that. We've got our couple of gun director tower boxes things. A little bit of a mold line on them, but very nicely detailed nonetheless. And some little stowage boxes or maybe ready-use ammo lockers. Very fine little raised details on those. Very, very nice. Now we're getting to the really small sprues, and we've got 10 of this one. But we've got our quad 40mm Bofors guns, and these are exquisite. Guns are very nicely molded. You can even see the difference between the recoil springs, the barrel, and then the actual flash hider on the muzzle. Do have a little bit of flash on some of these, but just nip that off. The actual mounts themselves, very nice. You know, texture. I guess it'd be diamond plate in real life, or you know, textured sort of steel plates, are nicely molded. Even a little tiny rivet detail. Very, very nice. And we've got a few other various little greeblies. Don't know if those are compass binnacles or can't say exactly what they are, but they are very, very nicely molded. Very impressive. And smaller again, we've got 5 of this one. We've got some signal lights or searchlights. Some more various little greeblies. And this one's definitely a compass binnacle. It's got the 2 big balls on either side there. maybe a rangefinder, or looks like maybe like a little radar dish. This looks to be a solid canopy for float planes. It's very, very fine raised framing. Very, very nicely done. And smaller again, we've got 7 of these. And here we have our molded in plastic at 1/350 scale, 20mm Oerlikon anti-aircraft guns. The gun itself, the pedestal, the ammunition drums, and I'm pretty sure these are the late style Oerlikons with the reflector sight on them, not the big spider web iron sights. You can actually see like a little opening where you would see the recoil spring and the mechanism inside. I mean, these are probably oversized for this scale, but those are very, very fine and very nice. This and the Bofors sprues, they could probably just package those and sell them as little upgrades for other kits. You know, stick some of these on a trumpeter or a Tamiya kit, and that would just crank it up to the next level. That is very impressive molding, able to get parts that fine. Wow. And finally, we've got a duplicate from our searchlight sprue. So we've got some of our searchlights and their lenses molded in clear, and the canopies for our float planes molded in clear. A little bit more flash on this one, but then clear plastic is always a bit different than solid color plastic. Not that you have a cockpit to see inside of those float planes anyway, but it is a nice touch. Very nice. Now, because this is the legendary limited edition version of this kit, we've got some extra goodies in addition to the plastic. We get a laser cut mask set that allows us to paint our deck and the upper surfaces of the turrets and anything that's basically supposed to be that dark blue for the decks. Of course, these were not natural wood, they were painted. So that is a awesome thing to include, because painting ships cleanly, getting a nice sharp line between superstructure and deck is always tricky, so these guys have taken the difficulty out of that with a very comprehensive mask set. That is really cool. And a red box, which is chock full of a whole bunch of very shiny photo-etch brass details. This is some of the shiniest photo-etch I've ever seen. We've got super fine ladders. We've got, this would be one of the bridge windows. We've got inclined ladders, little structural pieces, more little boat davits. Bits of railing, Very, very fine photo etch. I mean, the fineness of the plastic parts and the photo etch mirrors that very well. Some of the finest photo etch. All kinds of railings, of course, which is great to have. Even if they only included railings, that would be a great thing. We've got our crane on the stern for our float planes. We've got appear to be individual rungs, like ladder rungs, steps. That's a little scary, but that's incredible though. More little boat davits and other little, looks like that'd be our catapults for the float planes. Some other little bits and pieces. We got more inclined ladders. We got our radar dish. Actually, nice, hopefully labeling it so I know what I'm looking at. We got our gun director details, searchlight details. Man, this is some of the prettiest photo etch. I mean, form, function over form, but we've got grills, gratings for all of our Carly floats. With little, I guess those are tie downs or oars. More details for various gun mounts and more ladder rungs, little hatches. Wow. Got all of the gun shields for our 20mm Oerlikons. And more detail parts to add on to each individual gun mount. Get some beautiful hatches and doors. Those are very, very nice. I don't even think the Revell Platinum Edition, Bismarck and Tirpitz kits even have this much photo etch in them. Some of the finest photo etch mesh I've ever seen. That is absolutely gorgeous. We got, those are the armor for our 40mm Bofors tubs, with probably more detail parts for such. And some more big pieces and something waterline plate. So I'm not sure what that is. We'll have to see what the instructions say about that, but that is some very pretty photo etch, and you get a lot of it. So if you love this kind of stuff, you're gonna absolutely love this kit. And if that wasn't enough brass, we've also got turned main gun and secondary barrels. So if you don't like the molded plastic ones, because they're perfectly usable, we've also got these lovely brass ones. And those are going to be a direct replacement for the kit parts, so no having to drill out and fiddle and fuss with them, just glue them in and be done with it. Although these secondaries you might have to, main gun looks like they're going to fit right in, but the secondaries look like you're probably going to have to modify the mounts a little bit. But I would consider these an unnecessary addition because those plastic barrels look just fine, but hey, that's even more awesome. And last but not least, some very, very fine anchor chain. So talk about the full package. And our instruction manual. Some beautiful pictures of the, all the plastic and brass in the raw. It's always a kind of I've seen people take models like that to shows, and it's so different. It will just look so cool. Right off the bat, nice big picture of the actual, I'm not sure that's actually Missouri or one of the, oh, actually USS Missouri, New York, July 1944. So there's one of our quad 40mm guns. And your usual, clean your parts, don't sniff the glue, don't chew on knife blades, etc., etc. And your sprue maps. So we got our hull, got our main deck, all our various other parts, all of our photo etch and masking called out for. And right into it. So right off the bat, we've got some holes we need to open up. Various locations. Lots of photo etch to add. Okay, so these at first glance seem a little crazy, but between these callouts here, alternate view here, and pictures of the real thing, that's not going to be that hard to sort out, I don't think. Just pay attention to your differences for each of the gun turrets. Yeah, this is like equal parts crazy busy and well thought out. It's interesting. I like multiple views. Picture the real thing. That's really nice. At the very least, it's always great to be like, here's what it's supposed to look like, so you can see where you goofed up. Oh boy. So we've got our. Please read carefully before making and installing small parts according to your actual situation. So, very comprehensive here on how to form your photo etch. So not only do you have some 90-degree bends here, but you've also got some curves to take care of. Lots of very small pieces to add on. But they do seem to break it down. All the little photo etch assemblies broken into one step that you then add in place. And our 5-inch secondary gun mount. That's relatively straightforward. Yeah, so if you do want the metal barrels, you're going to have to nip off the kit ones. Little bit of photo etch to go in place here. And there are differences between them, so make sure you keep those straight. A highlighter and a notepad is going to be very helpful, I think. You've got our 20mm Oerlikons here, our plastic barrel, drum, and all of our photo etched detail pieces. That's impeccable. And you've got you've got 49 of those to put together. Another gun director. Got little bit of a typo here. Our Bofors mount, or Bofors guns. With various railings and little tiny photo-etched, you know, the control wheels. I like here they highlight in blue basically where your gluing surfaces are, so you're not having to guess where parts actually stick together. You get your actual aircraft sights, the little seats for the gunner and the layer, splinter shields. That's very impressive. 5-inch. I guess that's 5-inch. I guess that's a loading mechanism for the 5-inch guns of some description. We've got our Seahawk float plane. That's pretty straightforward. Anchor ×2, searchlight, 36-inch searchlight, a few plastic pieces, a few more little tiny photo etch pieces. Got our Carly floats. I guess the option of your photo etch, but I tell you, the molded plastic ones look really, really good. And some very impressive watertight doors in various types and sizes. So all those molded open hatches, you can actually have the doors open if you want to, instead of just having them all closed. You know, various compressed gas bottles in various combinations. And here, our waterline plate. Doesn't really tell me what it is. I'm sure maybe we'll find out later. We've got more baskets, which I think okay, so you might have to do a little bit of flipping around. Or do you? Yeah, you're gonna have to do a little bit of back and forth in this. So this is gonna be a whole bunch of sub-assembly after sub-assembly, and then building your major sub-assemblies before you can build your ship. So you got your floater net baskets called out here, but we don't really have the instructions for them until later, so you're not going to be able to do this kind of in a linear fashion, so you're going to want to go through and build every single one of these sub-assemblies first, and then start going to it here. We've got our catapults for our float planes ×2. And then here we're putting our main deck onto the hull. And okay, here's our... Okay, so I'm going to assume these are to help mark out either where to cut if you for some reason wanted to turn this into a waterline model, or most likely marking out where to paint the black boot stripe that goes at the waterline. So that's an interesting way of doing it, instead of having it, you know, some kits you'll have molded lines where the boot stripe goes. So that's an interesting way of going about it. And then gluing our propellers and propeller shafts and our rudders all together here. Although you'd want to have the propellers left off for painting. Foot boat boom. So it's a boom for, I guess, recovering the, some of the boats, perhaps. I'm assuming it's a boat boom, so it's probably for booming the boats. Got some cable reels. So yeah, okay, the actual cable part's molded in plastic, and then the outer portion with all the fine details in Photo-etch. Got some gun tubs and our capstans and whatnot for the anchors going in place, some small winches. Some more little details for the float plane and the catapult. Paravanes, I guess, for mine sweeping, I guess. It's a crane. Oh boy, so you gotta fold this up and then you've got even more internal supports to put in place, and reels and pulleys, and oh my goodness. More various deck fittings. Various ammo boxes and other deck details going in place. Got our beautifully molded little whaling boat there, the davits. Of course, that gets spruced up even more with Photo-etch. More details. I think it's bollards there for the mooring lines. And just careful noting of the orientation, so they should be bowed out a little bit. More details up and around the anchors and our anti-aircraft guns. Details around the turret rings. Wow, this is oh boy. Lots and lots and lots of Photo-etch details all around the superstructure, in addition to more plastic pieces. Oh my goodness. All these compressed gas bottles. It's really nice having the actual built-up pictures, just so you have a clear picture of what is brass, what is plastic, because sometimes just the black and white line drawings aren't the best. So that's very nice. Starting to build up more of our superstructure with more and more and more Photo-etch. If you are scared of Photo-etch or otherwise do not get along with it, this is not gonna be a kit for you, or you may want to wait to see if they do a more of a stripped down version, a weekend version, to use the Edward terminology. And it looks like, I mean, unless they were just slamming this together for a demonstration, looks like those raised lines should be left in place on this piece. Incredible amounts of detail. Got one of our major gun directors, more of our superstructure components. Hopefully, check fitting of parts before gluing. That is like fundamental. Fit twice, glue once. Even more details. Entire front of the bridge, or the pilot house as they call it, is all photo-etch. Suppose if you're feeling particularly adventurous, you could get some clear, thin sheet plastic and do the windows in there. I have been told that there is an additional detail set which does the entire interior of the bridge. So if this isn't enough photo etch for you, you can get even more. That's just incredible amounts of detail. Some of the parts for the top of our funnels going together, railings and various other details. Some of the masts. Just incredible amounts of detail. Got our large parabolic radar dish. More details. So, my goodness. Building up and building up. What you often hear with ship modelers is you build from the bottom up and the inside out, so you're not having to reach over very delicate parts. Here we're fitting our superstructure onto the main deck with our main battery. All of our secondary gun turrets. I'm not sure, you might want to have the hull and the main deck painted along with the turrets and everything and the superstructure at this point. I guess depends on your preference. And just like that, it's all done. Oh boy. So definitely, if you're not an organized modeler and if it takes longer than 2 weeks to build and you start going crazy, this is not going to be for you. But if you relish in all the little fine details that go, combine, extrapolate, and turn into a beautifully detailed kit, this is going to be a good one for you. And finish off with some more beautiful shots of the Missouri herself in July 44. And a few little facts on the actual USS Missouri, and of course most of this would translate to the Iowa class in general. Very nice. And simple color call out. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was the Measure 22 scheme. So we have the dark gray blue for the decks, lighter gray blue for the hull, and then a lighter gray for literally everything else. Although, as they show in the instructions, Missouri did have a little bit more interesting paint scheme at one time. So, get some references, you could probably do that one as well. But by the end of the war, Missouri, New Jersey, Iowa, and Wisconsin were all painted in this scheme. So, I suppose it's only fitting that after all of that work putting it together, that you get to relax with a relatively simple paint scheme. And lastly, our decal sheet. So we do get names for all 4 of the Iowa class, as well as their appropriate pennant numbers. We get our stars and bars for our float planes. Actually, probably get some extras there by the looks of it, and nice big stars and stripes there. Now these, they do feel a bit, those feel almost Tamiya thick, if not a little bit thicker, but hard to say how those will go down. I'm assuming these are printed in China by Galaxy Model, so I'm not familiar with them. I'm not sure what these are like, but the colors look good. They just feel really thick. But those look pretty good. And it is nice to see that they give you the option, if you don't want to do Missouri, you can do any of the other Iowa class. Chances are there's probably differences in armament and configuration, but at the very least, they, on the face you do get the option. So that's nice to see. Rather than doing 4 different boxes, just do one, call it the Iowa class, and be done with it. So the new 1/350 scale Missouri from Joyard. Lots and lots and lots of very detailed parts. This is going to build up into one very nice ship model. Ships, you kind of can't build them without dealing with a bunch of photo etch, because they just look half finished if you don't. As you can see, this is one of 3,000 units. This particular boxing with all the photo etch in it is going to be a limited run. My understanding is after that there will be more of a leaned down version of this released for those who would like a Missouri but don't want to lose their minds in the process. Having had a quick look at some of the competition, I think it's very safe to say that Joyard have put out the nicest kit of the Iowa class, specifically Missouri. So if you are a battleship modeler and you're looking to add the ultimate Missouri to your collection, this is definitely going to be a kit to be keeping an eye on. Thank you very much to Alan from Joyard for giving us a loan of this kit to have a good look at. If you guys like to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button, give us a like. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.